President Liao calls for unity as the recall war in Taiwan's legislature escalates. The fragile ceasefire between Hamas and Israel may be in danger. We find out what the latest U.S.-Taiwan defense deal means for relations moving forward. Plus, from beating creeps on the street to the best in the world, meet Pakistan's top female MMA fighter. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Taiwan's opposition-led legislature has voted to uphold amendments that make it harder to recall politicians, rejecting the cabinet's attempt to overturn them. Lawmakers passed changes to Taiwan's recall law last December, requiring voters seeking to recall lawmakers to provide ID when signing petitions. The cabinet submitted a motion to reconsider the amendments a week ago, requesting the legislature hold another vote. It's the third time the opposition-dominated legislature has upheld amendments over cabinet objections. On the topic of recall laws, a mass recall campaign in Taiwan that's seeing supporters of the KMT and the ruling DPP launch petitions to unseat each other's lawmakers is set to get bigger and messier. More groups are now calling for yet more recalls. Rick Liao reports on the growing partisan battle unfolding across the country and in the legislature.
驱逐亲中政党，驱逐亲中政党，恢复国会合议，恢复国会合议。
Pushing to recall en masse lawmakers from Taiwan's main opposition party, the Kuomintang or KMT, who this civil society group says are undermining the country's democracy.
但是他们今天所作所为已经超出了制衡这个范围，好，而是要瘫痪行政权，甚至夺取行政权。那这个跟人民的投票的所赋予的权利其实是并不同的。
Recalling lawmakers is the latest battle in a political war between the KMT and the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, or the DPP, who want to shift the balance of power in the country's legislature, currently in the hands of the KMT and other opposition lawmakers after they slashed the DPP government's budget. It's causing a political crisis for the party head and President Lai Ching-te, who called a first-of-its-kind meeting with the heads of all 5 branches of government, including the legislature, urging unity.
在这些挑战之下，台湾必须团结一致，团结才有力量，强化国防，发展经济，建构全社会防卫韧性，并且跟民主阵营肩并肩、紧密地站在一起，也才能够因应变局。
Lai faces an uphill battle in breaking this political deadlock. The two parties fundamentally disagree on what sort of relationship Taiwan should have with neighbouring China. The DPP firmly rejects China's claims of sovereignty over Taiwan, while the KMT prefers closer ties with Beijing, says Lai and his party are provoking war across the strait, and that the DPP is working with civil society groups to fuel the recall campaign with false accusations. At the landmark meeting of top government leaders, KMT heavyweight Han Kuo-yu said the ball was in Lai's court.
呼吁行政院不要提出中央政府总预算的复议案，不提复议案的前提之下，能不能找到一条可行的路？希望赖清德总统能够停止大罢免。
Putting Lai in a particularly difficult situation.
President Lai is not only the president, he's also chairman of the Democratic Progressive Party. So if he really wanted to, he could say that the party doesn't support these recall motions. Nominally, these efforts are run by civil society groups. It's not run by the party. But Ke Jianming, who's the head of the DPP's legislative caucus in the legislative yuan, has been an outspoken supporter of these recall efforts.
Taiwan's divided government, with the president's office and the legislature in the hands of different parties, is causing some of the biggest political drama here in years. Drama that Lai Ching-te is now under growing pressure to put to an end. Howard Zhang and Rick Liao for TaiwanPlus.
Tensions over Gaza have reignited after Hamas said it was suspending the release of Israeli hostages, citing what it calls Israeli violations of a ceasefire agreement. It comes as U.S. President Donald Trump doubles down on a plan for a U.S. takeover of the war-torn enclave. Joyce Zung brings us the latest.
Hundreds take to the streets of Tel Aviv, urging the Israeli government to make good on its promise to bring hostages held in Gaza back home. It comes after Palestinian militant group Hamas said it was halting the release of remaining Israeli captives, saying Israel is violating a ceasefire agreement, a long-awaited result after 15 months of war.
You see the situation, they're dying there, and their blood is on this government's hands.
I'm not expecting anything from Hamas. I mean, it's not like I care how much and how they behave and how they react. I'm here because my government is failing to fulfill their duty.
Returning from an official visit to Washington, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's address to his parliament was interrupted several times as opposition lawmakers grew angry, saying the leader was letting hostages die in Gaza. Meanwhile, Netanyahu detailed his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump, saying Trump presented a, quote, new revolutionary idea for Gaza. Trump has proven to be a wild card in Israel and Hamas's already fragile ceasefire deal. He's proposed a U.S. takeover of Gaza and displacement of its residents, a plan criticized by much of the international community. Trump has advised Israel to call off the ceasefire if Hamas does not release the remaining hostages as planned.
I'm speaking for myself. Israel can override it. But from myself, Saturday at 12 o'clock, and if they're not here, all hell is going to break out.
As the risk of resumed conflict in Gaza looms, fears are also mounting over Trump's vision for the enclave. The U.S. president has contradicted his own aides by saying Palestinians that live in Gaza would not have the right to return under his plans.
The obvious solution here would be a Palestinian state living side by side with an Israeli state. But the far right has always had a fourth option in mind: get rid of the Palestinians. And suddenly, that's what Trump is endorsing. That's what Trump is legitimizing, even though this would be a blatant war crime.
The stakes and emotions remain high as the ceasefire in Gaza hangs in the balance. But on top of the threat of war restarting, an uncertain future for the land and the people who call it home. Klein Wong and Joyce Sin for TaiwanPlus.
The Defense Ministry has reported one of the largest single-day Chinese incursions so far this year. The ministry reported spotting 32 Chinese military aircraft, 8 naval vessels, and 1 official ship operating around Taiwan during a 24-hour period ending Tuesday morning. Of these, 22 aircraft crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait and entered Taiwan's northern and southwestern Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. The ADIZ is not Taiwan's airspace, but serves as a buffer zone for defensive purposes. The military also monitored 2 Chinese balloons during the same period. The U.S. and Taiwan have signed a contract for 3 air defense systems known as NASAMS, with the first delivery expected by the end of this year. With Donald Trump back in office, Taiwan could see a surge in arms sales, given his record of signing more weapons deals than any other U.S. president. For more on this, Jaime Okan spoke to Lauren Dickey, a security analyst with the China Power Project based in Washington, D.C.
With the latest arms sale now signed and Taiwan looking to work with the Trump administration, what do you think Taiwan should be looking to accomplish?
I think what is probably going through the minds of officials in Taipei right now is a question of how they balance these demands for an asymmetric self-defense, which is written in Taiwan's policy, with the unknowns of the Trump administration, right? We don't really yet have clear indication of how Trump and team will approach arms sales to Taiwan. We know that there is likely to be pressure that Taiwan increases its defense spending levels, but we don't know how that will actually trickle down in day-to-day implementation. So I think Taiwan is really at this critical juncture right now. Do they spend on asymmetric systems that might be cheaper, but might give them a better, assurance against the challenges and threats they face? Or do they crank the other direction and start spending money on higher dollar, in some cases, capital and legacy systems that may or may not be the best systems for the threat they face, but could help them tick that requirement of showing they've invested more in their self-defense?
There's been a lot of criticism over Taiwan spending too much for weapons that might not survive in the event of a conflict. But at the same time, this new Trump administration is pushing Taiwan to spend more on its defense. How do you think Taiwan should balance this?
So I think one of the things that Taiwan might be considering is where can we make large dollar investments to replace systems that are getting old? And things like the E2D, that's one example of where they have legacy platforms that need to be updated and replaced. And I think Taiwan, as it goes forward to try and make this presumed gesture of investment and symbolic down payment on its own self-defense, on the back end of those investments, Taipei really has to have a clear plan for, E2Ds or other systems. Are they a peacetime capability? Are they a capability that's aimed at integrating with other regional militaries and partners, whether it's Japan or the Philippines or other neighboring countries? Or are they a wartime capability? So it really, my recommendation is it's not thought about as just this big dollar investment to show Trump that Taiwan is serious, but that it's thought about as a comprehensive plan for how these systems will really bolster Taiwan's defense capabilities.
If you had to speculate, what could we expect from the second Trump administration in terms of Taiwan's arms sales?
The volume of arms sales under Trump 2 compared to Trump 1 is going to be calibrated, frankly, by the capacity of the U.S. defense industrial base, right? It's under tremendous pressure right now from Ukraine. And so I think there's a big unknown here with how new SecDef Hegseth is able to reinvigorate U.S. investments in the defense industrial base, and that ability to bolster our own capabilities to build stuff in the States will trickle down to Taiwan, as it will every partner. That said, I do think there's a lot of potential for this positive trajectory of arms sales, both in quantity and quality, to continue.
That was Lauren Dickey, a security analyst with the China Power Project. Taiwan's fledgling jury system is set for a major expansion. Starting in 2026, citizen judges will participate in deciding sentences for a broader range of cases. But as John Van Triest reports, the idea has split opinion in the legal profession.
A movement to reform the court system is getting a big new win. For the past 2 years, so-called citizen judges, select members of the public, have been helping professional judges deliver verdicts in serious cases, including murder, on a mixed panel. And from next year, the range of cases they will help decide will grow much wider, to every case where a prison sentence of 10 years or more is at stake. The idea is to create transparency in the justice system and counter criticism that professional judges are out of touch. But the system has been used in fewer than 300 cases so far, and some who work with the law worry lay people aren't ready for the wider variety of cases to come.
杀人他可以很直观的了解到不是刀枪，但是一个贪渎案件有一些是去特定的收礼，那也其实前金啦、后谢啦、回扣等等的，那这一些不同的构成要件的说明，会影响整个案情不一样的走向，所以它困难度会变得更抽象。
There are also fears of greater burden for lawyers, who now will need to put more effort into communicating with the non-specialists on the panel of judges.
大家结案的意愿还是没有那么的高啦，因为本质上来说，这样子的案件类型对于律师的时间成本过大，然后日常的负担也很大。那再加上我们现在台湾的律师事务所绝大多数是中小型的事务所，所以他很难去密集的去参与相关的审理。
But not everyone is so pessimistic. Some lawyers even think the wider life experience people outside the legal profession have could help the cause of justice. For example, in fraud cases, something that can stump younger professional judges.
I'm not surprised anymore when I see judges and prosecutors look at a bunch of forged, fraudulent documents, and then they say, "Oh, yeah, but I just can't tell that he really meant to steal the money." And and I look at that and I'm like, well, since when did this 90-year-old man want to buy 2,000 air compressors? And you like to hope that a citizen judge in the middle of this could look at this and have the same outraged reaction I have when I see Taiwan courts regularly come back unable to find fraud.
Whatever criticism is made about the citizen judge system, and there has been a fair amount, those in charge of the justice system are certain it's here to stay, and its role in society is going to grow. Ryan Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, the U.S. is entering a new era of foreign policy, but what does that mean for Asia?
"2025 is calling. Louder, brighter, and bolder. From the roar of the crowds to the quiet moments of triumph. A year to experience sports at its finest. Grab your tickets, tune in, and cheer like never before. Every play counts. Every minute matters. Game on, Taiwan."
I'm Leslie Liao in New York City, and this is TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia. Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A reminder of our top story. Australia has asked for an exemption from new U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum of 25%, which were just signed into effect by U.S. President Donald Trump.
I presented Australia's case for an exemption, and we agreed on wording to say publicly, which is that the US President agreed that an exemption was under consideration in the interests of both of our countries.
Trump had previously said there would be no exceptions. Washington is aiming to ensure it, quote, never has to rely on foreign nations for critical industries, including steel and aluminum. Currently, the largest foreign sources of U.S. steel are Canada, Brazil, and Mexico, but Taiwan also ranks among the top 10 suppliers. Meanwhile, the price of gold has broken record highs as Trump's tariffs raise fears of a multi-front trade war. One of the biggest questions facing the new Trump administration is how the U.S. will approach allies in the Asia-Pacific and what it will expect from those partnerships. For more, Alec McDonald spoke to Ryan Haas, director of the China Center at Brookings.
Ryan, I want to start off by asking, where did the Biden administration leave the state of U.S. Asia-Pacific alliances?
Well, I think overall, the Biden administration's approach to allies and partners was strong. The relationships that the United States nurtured with its allies improved during the period of Joe Biden's administration. And there were several new innovations. He really emphasized minilateral or quadrilateral groupings of countries to pool capabilities, both to accelerate innovation, to pre-position capabilities, and also to push back in areas of concern in the region. So these groupings converged over the past 4 years to build sort of a denser network of partnership relationships in the region to try to shrink the space, basically, for China to be able to throw its weight around in the region.
With President Donald Trump now in the White House, what are the biggest challenges his administration will face in terms of Asia-Pacific partnerships?
Well, I think the biggest challenge that he'll face is that President Biden and members of his administration invested a lot of time and energy into nurturing and building these alliance relationships and partnerships throughout the region. And so sort of matching the level and tempo of engagement that the Biden administration set will be a challenge. The second challenge that President Trump will face is just a fundamental question, a philosophical question almost. To what extent does he view alliance relationships as additive to American power, and to what extent does he view them as a drain on American power and resources? And then the final question that I think he will face is a question of whether or not to deal with these alliance relationships in a comprehensive or holistic fashion, looking at the broader region and how the United States can maximize its leverage and its influence in the region, or whether he will prefer to deal with these relationships on a one-on-one bilateral basis.
And that approach will change as there is a change in the landscape in the Asia-Pacific region for matters such as climate change, economic, and defense challenges arise. So how might the Trump administration approach this new landscape with its partners?
Multilateral institutions will not serve as much of a meeting place or a place of convergence for the United States and its partners to work together. The United States under President Trump is withdrawing from many of these agreements and understandings, whether it's the Paris Climate Accords, the World Health Organization, or others. And so that will sort of shrink the space available for coordination amongst allies and partners. Another is just on a thematic level. What will be the priorities of this incoming administration? As your question alluded to, I think that climate, defined as climate issues, will probably receive lesser prominence in the hierarchy of priorities that the Trump administration has than was the case during the Biden administration. And I think that conversely, trade issues will receive more prominence under the Trump administration than was the case during the Biden administration. And so I think that Washington is shifting a bit in terms of its overall priorities, and I think the region and Washington will have sort of an awkward dance for a period of time as these shifts take place.
That was Ryan Haas, director of the China Center at Brookings. The International Boxing Association says it's suing the International Olympic Committee for allowing 2 athletes to compete in last year's Summer Games. Taiwan's Ling Yuting and Algeria's Iman Khalif both won gold in women's boxing at the Paris Olympics. Both were earlier disqualified from the IBA's 2023 World Championships amid speculation over their gender. The Boxing Association was subsequently expelled from the Olympic movement. After filing a complaint in Switzerland, where the Olympic Committee is based, the association have said they'll also pursue legal action in France and the United States. The IBA's head cited U.S. President Donald Trump's order to ban transgender athletes from women's sporting events as validating their efforts to, quote, protect the integrity of female sports. Neither Ling Yuting nor Iman Khalif is transgendered. A female MMA fighter in Pakistan is inspiring a new generation of women with her no-tap-ever approach to competition. Known as the arm collector, she's fought through waves of adversity on her way to the top. Bryn Thomas reports.
It's a bit of a cliche, but like many top mixed martial artists, Anita Karim was blooded as a child, brawling with her 3 older brothers in a rugged, remote part of the world. What sets her apart is becoming Pakistan's first professional female cage fighter. She competes in one championship, Asia's biggest MMA promotion. Karim's known as the arm collector, and it's a nickname she's earned.
So we have like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu competition. Is have like a rules. If you got the lock or something like choke, you have to tape. So like the girls like didn't tape. So she think she gonna be like get out from there, but cannot. And I had like broke the arm girls, so they call arm collector.
Anita Karim spent years training in Taekwondo and Jiu-Jitsu before discovering her true calling in mixed martial arts, a sport combining striking and grappling. It's an exceedingly rare pursuit for women in Pakistan, a deeply conservative Muslim-majority country. Her brother, now her coach, knows the cultural challenges all too well.
In a culture like this, when you are in Pakistan and there's people full of different kind of stereotypes and taboos, training your own sister puts a big question mark on your forehead. Especially when she's competing on such a platform where you cannot not follow the rules of you cannot not follow the dress code.
Dividing her time training at a family-owned gym in Islamabad and a camp in Thailand, Anita Karim refines her best technique, a key lock from scarf hold. At her current level, she's aiming to beat the best in the world with a skill set that's already proven effective against the average creep on the street.
In the evening, my mom's called me, so I picked the phone and I was talking with my mom, and some guy tried to some person actually, he tried to harass me, like a street harassment. He tried to touch me, and then I just throw my phone and I run all 5 minutes, and I just catch him and I beat him and he had a lot of blood on his face and everything.
Anita Karim is one of more than 80% of Pakistani women who faced public harassment, according to the UN. Though normally timid outside the ring, she has made it her mission to empower the women of her country, stepping into a leadership role. Whenever she returns from competing abroad, small groups of fans gather at the airport to greet her. Her efforts have already inspired at least 5 other female MMA fighters from her home region of Gilgit-Baltistan.
Because she has competed at the highest level in Pakistan, at least, so we all girls look up to her because she, definitely she's one of the best fighters, and she's definitely the best fighter in Pakistan.
Starting from a small village and reaching the world stage, Anita Karim is determined to push forward with her MMA dreams. Having beaten her brothers, top fighters, and societal prejudice, she's become a symbol of female empowerment in Pakistan. Andy Shea and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, today we head over to Copenhagen, where over 1,000 people wearing lights take part in a race during the city's Light Festival. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.